The committee will come to order. I'm pleased to have the second distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this very important topic, and I ask that our witnesses please rise and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I'd now like to formally introduce our second panel. Mr. Jeffrey Baumgartner serves as the Vice President for National Security and Resilience at Berkshire Hathaway Energy, and Dr. Paul Schwennesen serves as the co-director of the Global Strategy Decisions Group, also my classmate from the United States Air Force Academy, class of 2000. Thank you for being here, and we will now recognize Mr. Baumgartner for your opening statement of 5 minutes.
Chairman, ranking members, and members of the subcommittees, thank you for inviting me to testify. My name is Jeffrey Baumgartner, and I serve as the Vice President of National Security and Resilience Policy at Berkshire Hathaway Energy. Today, I want to discuss how unmanned aerial systems threaten critical infrastructure. Berkshire Hathaway Energy businesses provide reliable, secure, low-cost energy to more than 13 million customers in the U.S., Great Britain, and Canada. Our commitment to our customers requires us to secure our infrastructure from all threats, including those posed by unmanned aerial systems. Critical infrastructure is the backbone of our economy and security, yet energy sector infrastructure and the transportation, communications, and water sector infrastructure we rely on face increasing threats from UAS, and the stakes for ensuring resilience and security could not be higher. In recent years, UAS technology has become more accessible, affordable, and advanced. While these innovations offer immense potential, like enabling faster damage assessments of energy infrastructure, they also empower malicious actors. Adversaries can use UAS to surveil facilities, deliver hazardous payloads, disrupt operations, and even conduct cyber intrusions. The Department of Homeland Security's 2025 Homeland Threat Assessments highlights UAS as a persistent and growing risk to critical infrastructure. This warning isn't hypothetical. Last month, federal agents arrested an individual planning to use a UAS to attack an electric substation. I hope we can proactively address the UAS threat before a significant incident occurs. Despite the pervasiveness of the threat, existing federal laws and regulations have not kept pace with the rapid proliferation of UAS technology. Current frameworks primarily address safety and airspace management, but lack robust provisions to counter malicious UAS activities. This leaves critical infrastructure companies vulnerable to increasingly sophisticated threats. To address these risks, we must modernize our defenses while balancing security measures with civil liberties. A comprehensive strategy that incorporates technology innovation, appropriate legal frameworks, and public-private collaboration is essential. I hope we can prioritize the following actions. Number one, grant critical infrastructure companies limited authority to deploy advanced detection and counter-UAS technologies. Investments in cutting-edge counter-UAS systems will ensure we can address current and emerging threats effectively. Two, identify formal mechanisms for sharing actionable information about UAS threats and enable law enforcement at all levels with the tools and legal authorities to address UAS threats effectively. The third is advanced research and development. Collaborative R&D will improve the ability to neutralize UAS threats without collateral damage. The fourth and final, develop a comprehensive strategy to align regulatory, technological, and operational efforts at federal, state, and local levels, while addressing privacy concerns and establishing clear legal parameters for UAS operations. The private sector owns most of the critical infrastructure that provides key services, but protecting these assets is a collaborative effort. The National Security Memorandum on Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience rightly emphasizes this partnership. However, existing counter-UAS authorities for DHS and the Department of Justice are set to expire soon. Failing to renew and expand current authorities risks leaving critical infrastructure defenseless against the evolving UAS threat. The window of opportunity to address these challenges is closing. By modernizing our defenses, updating our legal frameworks, and fostering collaboration, we can safeguard critical infrastructure, protect public safety, and maintain our leadership in security and innovation. We are ready to work alongside this committee, a coalition of critical infrastructure companies, and relevant stakeholders to effectively protect our critical services against the evolving UAS threat. Thank you for holding this hearing, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. The chair now recognizes Dr. Paul Schwennesen for his opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Pfluger and Jimenez, ranking members Magaziner and Thanadar, and distinguished members of the subcommittees. Homeland from unmanned aerial systems. So I've rearranged my remarks busily in the back, hoping to give you guys something a little more tangible to work with so that we're not just repeating and risking the constant repetition of the problem. I think we acknowledge the problem. We have a real train wreck coming. I think it goes a little bit unsaid. I think we lack a lot of the technical know-how on how to deal with this, on how to assess and neutralize these threats. But there is somebody who does know, and that's the Ukrainians. Having recently observed firsthand the astonishing evolution in drone operations in Ukrainian-occupied Kursk, I think the message, for me at least, has finally sunk home. Unmanned systems are not just an iteration. They are indeed a revolution in the application of lethal force. The world's most advanced weapons and tactics are being developed and deployed at scale in the Ukraine-Russian front at remarkably low cost and without central direction. And these facts hold radical implications for the next major shooting war between great powers. We need to learn from the Ukrainians. The United States is rapidly losing its strategic military advantage in this new technical environment. There can be little doubt that China, North Korea, Iran, and other emergent powers are eagerly sending observers and technicians to the front lines in occupied Ukraine to very carefully note the revolution in weapons delivery and to adopt it into doctrines which seek to invert the military strengths of their larger, better equipped, better trained Western geopolitical adversaries. We need to learn from Ukraine. In short, the rules of the arms race have been fundamentally rewritten to favor small, cheap, easily mastered weapon systems. More important still, these disproportionate advantages are not a one-time effect. They amplify in a positive feedback loop through each iteration cycle. New tech gets better exponentially faster and is deployed far more quickly than legacy countermeasures. In Ukraine, the source of this immense innovation reservoir is the highly adaptable, highly diffuse emerging engineering base of Ukrainian technicians. Uncountable tech workers routinely work full days in their civilian capacity, then leave their jobs to go work in pop-up tech facilities until late at night. The whole country is on deck. They have created an ecosystem of invention, a web only loosely coordinated through the Ministry of Defense. The advances in hardware and software they produce are channeled into a robust system of decentralized training facilities. And in less than 3 weeks, an FPV drone operator can be mission ready. Operators with no previous battlefield experience have been credited with as many as 1,500 confirmed kills. The disproportionality is vast. And this is perhaps the main takeaway in a total war peer-to-peer scenario. If technology allows one side of a conflict to impose extraordinary damage on the exquisite, expensive, difficult-to-master weapon systems of their adversary, and can do so at a fraction of the cost expended by their enemy, it doesn't require an economist to see where that leads. It is easy to be a critic, but I am convinced that the United States and its NATO allies have a very narrow window of opportunity to address this major shift in comparative advantage. Current operations in Ukraine have shown what a scrappy, innovative force can do to a large, hidebound military machine. It would be well to take note. So some of the scenarios looking forward. I think the most likely is that the U.S. will fall behind the leading edge of UAS development and deployment and will only start to respond in the aftermath of a crisis, and we're seeing some of that already in New Jersey. We don't need a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11 to wake us up. We're already awake. We need to deal with this now. So the best case is possibly, conceivably, that we can avoid this kind of depressing scenario through a well-orchestrated demonstration. Historical examples such as the sinking of the Ostfriesland, Air Force people know this well, show that it is sometimes possible to break entrenched paradigms by publicly demonstrating the current system's vulnerabilities. When understood by the right audiences, these demonstrations can shift doctrine development and tactical training in new and constructive ways, preferably before the lessons are learned the hard way. We need to learn from Ukraine. It's time to get a task force to mop up information, go out there, sponge this stuff up, and learn from what they're doing, and learn this information from in theater and get up to speed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schwennesen. The chair will note that we had a third expert on the panel, Mrs. Kathy LeWeir from the National Football League, unfortunately unable to join today. However, the chair asked unanimous consent to enter Ms. LeWeir's testimony into the record. Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning as we did prior. Dr. Schwennesen, I'd like to focus on something here. Policy versus technology. What is our issue right now? Is it not enough technology? Is it not keeping up with the technology? As you mentioned, maybe we're being outmaneuvered in a lot of cases by the Russians, and the Ukrainians may have some information that we can learn from. Or is it a policy issue here as we protect the homeland, or is it both?
Yeah, I do think it's both. I think it's a combination of the two. I think we have created a policy thicket of bureaucracy that basically stifles the innovation space, right? I do think we have a technical know-how problem, or at least we know for a fact that Ukrainians have a technical know-how solution, right? And I think if we're able to reduce some of the bureaucratic barriers to innovation, allow people to tinker and experiment and learn at the operational military level, this needs to happen like yesterday, right? We can't do the same old business of doing a 2.5-year request for proposal and wait for things to come back. We just can't do this business as usual. We do not have that time.
As we sit here, you listen to the testimony. We currently have UASs flying over New Jersey. We heard from Mr. Smith in New Jersey that they were flying over Coast Guard vessels last night. How is this possible? Why are we not responding? What do we need to do, and what actions need to be taken?
Yeah, that's a very difficult one to answer. Of course, I can't speak for them, but I have a suspicion that people are frozen with fear of what would happen in an administrative situation in which they took action and they were punished for doing so. That they shot down a drone, God forbid, and the debris hit somebody's house, and all of a sudden they're on front page news. And so people are acting out of a sort of sense of self-restraint here, which is being promoted by our policy environment.
So when it comes to technology, we need to focus on our offensive technology, lessons learned in the Ukrainian conflict where they're leveraging UAS systems everywhere. We need to focus on our counter UAS technology, and our policy needs to improve in order to counter it and give the authorities that we need while protecting privacy of citizens here.
Yep, I would say so, absolutely.
I'll come back to you in a second. Mr. Baumgartner, what's the most catastrophic event in the energy industry, critical infrastructure, that we need to be thinking about and planning for to prevent?
I mean, luckily we haven't seen a significant incident. I think from an imagination perspective, certainly something with a payload like the gentleman from Tennessee who was planning an incident to drop a payload into a substation. You could imagine that at a larger scale and impacting or identifying more critical infrastructure from generation to substations, or even on the pipeline side, a liquid natural gas import-export facility.
So my district, the Permian Basin, 6 million barrels a day, needs to be protected, and the authorities, in some cases, as you recommended in your testimony, should be delegated to private companies, in some cases, to both identify and also mitigate if needed.
I think that energy infrastructure in your district should be considered to be protected. Now, how that gets to a place where we can do that as the private sector, there are probably steps to get there. We have great relationships with local, state, federal law enforcement, and are happy to take an intermediary step to work with them to ensure that we understand the technology, the appropriate technology is in place, and we can implement that technology in a future state. Thank you.
Dr. Schwennesen, we'll go back to the services for a second and the race for technology. Let's focus on the Air Force, our alma mater, the Air Force Academy. How would you characterize the responses that we're seeing out of DOD, specifically the Air Force? Are they doing it fast? Is it neat in its approach? Or is it just average?
Yeah, right. I think it is below average, it gives me no pleasure to say that, but I think we are not taking it seriously enough. Again, it is as if everyone sees the train coming, everyone agrees the train is coming, and yet no one is taking any steps to get out of its way. Everyone is assuming that somebody else is doing it, and there's just no sense of urgency or coherent activity to address this issue. And again, that's easy for me to say. It's easy for me to throw spears from the sidelines. But I do think that one of the things we can do is leverage our very good relationships we have with Ukraine. We've given them a lot of resources, and they are quite willing and eager to give us something back in return for it. We should be mopping that information up right now. We should be sending people there right now.
Thank you very much. My time's expired. I recognize the ranking member for his question.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you both. Dr. Schwennesen, I want to begin by commending you and thanking you for your assistance to the Ukrainians. I have to remind, unfortunately, some of my colleagues from time to time that Vladimir Putin is not our friend, that the cause of the Ukrainians is the cause of freedom and democracy, and that Russia continues to pose a threat not just to Ukraine, but to American interests all over the world. And so I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing over there, because that is the front line of freedom today.
Thank you.
I was interested in your written testimony when you expressed some skepticism in the effectiveness of signal jamming technology to mitigate risks from UAS on the battlefield. I was wondering if you could expand on that. Why are you sort of skeptical about the effectiveness or the promise of signal jamming and other counter UAS technology on the battlefield and also writ large?
Sure. I claim no engineering expertise in drone warfare, but all I can do is say what I've seen, which is that in the world's most intense EW battle space, which is the Ukrainian-Russian front at the moment, it is an electronic warfare chaos, right? And so what people used to think about the ability to jam drones, which is what some of the speakers we had here are talking about, which is 2 years old, which at this point is effectively a century old, obsolete information. Jamming doesn't work the way we think it does. And there are so many new developing technologies on countering the counters, right? They've already gone multiple layers ahead of us. At this point, they're doing AI pixel lock technology that doesn't have any RF frequency whatsoever. They're doing ambush technology where they're not needing to have any kind of communication between operator and drone. So, again, I don't know the specifics beyond what I've just seen, the tip of the iceberg, which is that, the jamming solution is not a one-size-fits-all, that's the silver bullet. It might be a piece of a suite, but that's only a piece.
Yeah. And I recognize that you've thought about this in sort of the DOD space more perhaps than Homeland, domestic law enforcement, et cetera. But I imagine the lessons are transferable. What do we need to do specifically in order to go from being laggards to leaders on this? You referenced procurement issues and kind of speeding that up. You referenced, bringing a spirit of I guess, inventiveness and innovation. But are there other specific things? I mean, is there training that we should be looking at deploying across the federal government? Is there some kind of specific workaround to procurement rules that you would recommend? Like, what are the nuts and bolts of what we should be doing in order to take back the advantage?
Yeah, I do think Yankee ingenuity is one of our comparative strengths, and we need to take advantage of it. And one of the ways to do that, this is not an especially sexy solution, so I say that with apologies in advance. But I think one example of an idea is to, at the DoD level, get drones down to the absolute operational level of units, so they can begin to tinker. There is as Elon Musk says, move fast and break things. You need to learn on the fly. You need to learn in the trenches how these things are operated. It isn't enough to do this from a centrally managed, top-down approach in which we're going to go through this entire typical cycle and then deliver the tool to the warfighter wrapped with a ribbon. It doesn't work that way anymore. We have to give it to them and let them develop it on the fly.
Empower the people on the front lines to innovate. That makes sense. Mr. Baumgartner, I apologize, I only have a minute left, but I wanted to explore this importance of the cooperation between private industry and particularly state and local law enforcement. What are the best practices there that you've noticed, and are there things that we can do to support those kinds of collaborations?
Well, we work very hard to establish and maintain those relationships in all the states and localities that we serve. I think it does become about manpower and hours spent in doing that collaboration, and so there are certainly challenges to maintaining that. But I think fusion centers are a great opportunity to engage in a wide variety of state and local efforts at one location. I think there are other similar opportunities, like in our sector, we have the Electricity Information Sharing and Analysis Center that also convenes those state and local partners in a regional fashion, and we're able to effectively have those conversations and maintain those relationships in that forum as well.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Ranking Member, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I'm not going to take 5 minutes. But Mr. Schwennesen, I totally agree with you that we have a problem here in the United States in dealing with these systems, not only for warfare but also for protecting the homeland. I would think that what part of the problem is that you got $500,000 in the FBI. I'm sure you have $500,000 in some other agency, and you got all these agencies working on the same issue, and then it's not really centralized. There's no planning, et cetera. Maybe airports are trying to do their thing, and the FBI is trying to do their thing, and Customs and Border Protection is trying to do their thing. Would it be beneficial to try to put this all together and just focus on the unmanned aerial system threat in the homeland?
I have to say I lean that way. I hate to beat a dead horse here, but the Ukrainians have once again shown some ways to deal with this. They have stood up their entire separate new force, very much like the Marine Corps or the Air Force. They've set up the Unmanned Aerial Systems Service in the Ukrainian Department of Defense in order to do precisely that, in order to address this entire new sector of technology and how it's to be developed and applied.
Probably one of the advantages that the Ukrainians had is that they had no Air Force, basically, right? And so by necessity, they needed to come up with something different that actually combated the threat. We have an Air Force. And unfortunately, what happens is that you have the resistance to change, and UAS, unmanned systems, et cetera, are a threat to the people that fly the planes, okay? And so we do need to look at this in an entirely different way. And so not only on the DOD side, where we do need to have the private sector innovate, and the RFP should be, hey, I want to knock out, I want to sink Chinese ships, all right? And just simple as that. If you ask DOD to do that, they'll come up with an aircraft carrier that costs $10 billion and all these systems. The Ukrainians are sinking Russian ships in the Black Sea with little boats with maybe 500 or 600 pounds of TNT on them. A whole bunch of them can't possibly take them all out, and basically boom, no submarine, because that's the other thing we'd look at. Well, maybe we need to have these really expensive submarines with torpedoes and stuff. The old way of fighting war. We need to look at the new way of fighting war. But here it's Homeland Security. Look, I'm convinced that we're going to have a problem. We'll wake up when something happens, because that's always what we do. And we should be waking up right now. And so one of the things maybe that we should be looking at is how do we centralize a Homeland Security kind of focus on unmanned systems and how we protect all our infrastructure, airports, the energy system, our electricity, our grid, all of that is vulnerable. And so that's all I have to say, and I'll yield my time back, and I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Diaz-Posito.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Schwennesen, I know it was discussed earlier, and I wish some others on the other side were here to listen, because sometimes when we talk about Russia, China, and Iran, we're referred to as fearmongers. But the proliferation of drone technology from foreign adversaries like Russia, like China, like Iran, has impacted conflicts across the globe. What is the risk of such technology being transferred or replicated by domestic actors in the United States or by transnational criminal organizations across our borders? And how can we disrupt these supply chains?
Well, the risk is 100%. I mean, it's if it hasn't happened already, and I'm sure it has, but if it hasn't, it's about
Definitely has.
Right. How do we mitigate it is again, that this is the elephant in the room. And I think the only way to mitigate these kinds of threats is to out-innovate the threat itself. This is something that we've been traditionally good at. It's something we have the technical know-how and the capacity to do. But right now we have not opened the gates. We have not gotten our juices flowing, as they say, to address these threats and out-innovate the threat.
Thank you. I know we have to go vote, so I'm going to make this quick. But Mr. Baumgartner, just last month, a Tennessee man was arrested for plotting to use a drone carrying an explosive to destroy a Nashville power substation. We know that there have been additional incidents of suspicious drone activity near substations. And I think this is critically important, especially in the time that we're in where there is this big push for alternate energy sources, whether it's battery storage, whether it's wind storage, without really doing the work to make sure that we could protect these assets. In addition to cyber concerns, what physical security risks do drones pose to energy sector assets?
A great question. I think payloads are obviously, as witnessed in the Tennessee case, but you could simply ram a drone into some of our infrastructure. And we do take a defense in-depth approach and try to add shielding and obfuscate certain targets. But on top of that, you could also see a situation, and we've seen published cases where they've actually used drones to enable a cyber intrusion as well.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen from New York. I thank all the witnesses for the valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we would ask the witnesses to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, this subcommittee stands adjourned.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning signal obfuscation.
Good.
It's so ridiculous.
I know.
Representatives pretending like all these drones are using remote ID.
Like all you gotta do is wave a wand and like
No, it's open source and online. I think it's a bigger threat than these traditional protocols and autonomous drones. You could take a Walmart drone and make it Berkshire Hathaway. So thank you so much.
well, you sound like exactly the kind of guy that we need to get in on this fight, get their brains focused on outmaneuvering and out.
C-SPAN's Washington Journal, our live forum involving